Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 7th of October. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. As you know, today is the birthday of the President of Russian Federation Vladimir Putin. So this is the reason why most of the military experts, at least from the Russian side, were expected that exactly today the Ukrainians will try to start their massive counteroffensive operation as a present to the President of Russian Federation. But during the day, as you can see, the front line were pretty stable. And to tell the truth, there were no like big updates, big events on the front line. So let's discuss them, because we have something to discuss. First of all, let's start with the Kupiansk front line, with this area. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported that during the day, the Ukrainians were trying to attack on the east side from Kupiansk. With the broad front line attack, they were trying to attack the towns like Berestovaya, this one, the town like Kislivka, this one, the town like Pershetravnevaya, this one, and all these towns were under Ukrainian attack. But the Russians reported that Ukrainians were using just 2 battalions for this attack, so that means that it wasn't like a grand massive attack, it was some kind of recon combat, maybe to develop their position, trying to understand, or to prepare the upcoming greatest offensive operation in Kharkiv or LPR region. And the Russians reported that during that attack, the Ukrainians were defeated. They lost around 80 soldiers, around 5 tanks, 4 armored vehicles, and something around 9 cars, just like mobile cars in this area. If we are talking about the south, about Liman area, there is a river, this one, Zheribets. We discussed this river many times. This river were supposed to be the defense, I'm not sure like defense, at least the front line in the past, but the Russians were moved from this area towards Kremenaya. So the Ukrainians were trying to cross this river because, as far as I understand, as I know, the bridges crossing this river were destroyed. So the Russians reported that during the crossing process, they attacked a group of Ukrainians on this river, and the Ukraine lost around 30 soldiers, 7 armored vehicles, and something around 5 mobile cars. So as you can see, the front line is stable in this area as well. Furthermore, the Russians reported that they have completed the preparation of Kremenaya defense line, they have completed the preparation of Svatova defense line, they have completed the preparation of defense line of the road between Svatova and Kremenaya, so that's mean like Krasnorechskaya. There were no reports about any preparation on the line between Troitskaya and Nizhnya Duvanka, between these two towns. We may think that the Russians want the Ukrainians to attack in this direction as the last fortified area. And as we discussed in the previous videos, this is a very crazy step if the Ukrainians are going to use this way, because in this case, the Russians will be able to attack from Belgorod district region to the south, and they will be able to cut the Ukrainians, encircle them, and to create a cauldron without any possibilities for the Ukrainians to have any fortifications on the ground in this area. So this is like the way, this is like the things that the Russians want or force the Ukrainians to do during the upcoming counteroffensive operation. Now we are moving to the south, to the our triangle, Slavyansk, Seversk, Bakhmut, this area. The front lines in this area are stable as well. The Russians reported, and as you can see, the Russian source map has been updated a little bit. Now they're showing the current situation in the towns like Nikolaevka, Drugaya Nikolaevka, Zaitsevo, that located in the north of Gorlovka. The Russians still hasn't colored Atradovka, Zaitsevo, Veselo Dolina on the south of Bakhmut into red color, but yesterday we got report that they got control over these towns. And also the Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours they attacked Slavyansk, and they attacked 25th Brigade Seversk. They attacked 79th in Slavyansk, 25th in Seversk, and 13th in town Kurdyumovka, in these two towns. And as a result of those attacks, the Ukrainian lost around 100 soldiers and 12 armored vehicles, so not much for 3 brigades, for 3 areas of attack. If we're talking about the Russians, they are storming Pervomaisk. A few days ago, they reported that they have established control over this town, but today, I believe that this town is still in the gray zone. Maybe this area, Pervomaisk, is maybe the Russians have like maybe 60-70% of control, but the Ukrainians still have possibility to move their commandos, scouts in this area. Today there were a very interesting video in this area from this part of Pervomaisk where the Ukrainian commandos were fighting with the Russian stormtroopers using the drones, and the battle was very close combat. I believe that the battle was somewhere near this building. The Ukrainians were hiding in this building. Yes, I believe so. The Ukrainians were here, the Russians were in this building, and there was something around 12 Ukrainians, and they were like blocking the Russians, and they were drone. So it was a very interesting video. The close combat, it's like very strong guys who are fighting here. I believe it's a crazy situation, of course. So the Russians are storming, trying to develop their bridgehead around Donetsk. We understand that they still need to encircle Avdiivka, but for now it's impossible to do this. If we are talking about Zaporozhye front line, no changes on this front line. The Russians reported that Ukrainians are moving more and more forces, trying to accumulate these forces. We will discuss this a little bit later. And we are moving to Kherson district. As you can see, there are a lot of icons in this area saying that something were happening there. The Russians reported that Ukrainians were attacking this area from many directions, from Nikolaevsk in direction of Ternovo-Pody, but they were defeated in this area. They were reported that Ukrainians were trying to attack towns like Bruskinska, Petykhatka, Sadok, Ishchenka, the line between Andreev Bridgehead and Duchan in this area, but they were defeated as well. And furthermore, if we're talking about this Petykhatka, the Russians reported that there was some campaign of 60s brigade, and they were completely defeated and destroyed with 100% losses from Ukrainian side. The Russians reported that during previous 24 hours of clashes on this front line, the Ukraine lost around 300 soldiers, 7 tanks, 13 armored vehicles, and something around 7 mobile cars. Furthermore, the Russian source map has been updated a little bit, as you can see. The Russians are saying that they still control the south part of Duchany. This area, as you can see, this small village is split in 2 parts by the river. This small river, the bridge is destroyed. This bridge was destroyed by the Russians while retreating process, but anyway, they control this bank of the river. So we can say that the front line in this area is stable as well. So the Russians, and this is a very big problem for the Ukrainians, because at this stage of the war, the time works in Russian favor. They're moving more and more reserves, they're moving more and more infantry, they're building some training centers, they're establishing them military facilities, military infrastructure on the territory of Russian Federation. They're building more weapons, more armored vehicles, tanks, and if we're talking about the Ukrainians, they have a very big problem, a lot of problem in their economy. This country is totally unprepared for the winter period. At least we can say this about towns like Kharkov, like the territories that was returned by the Ukrainians during the counter-offensive operation. And if we're talking about the Russians, they have prepared everything before the winter. Every single town in this area has gas, has water, has electricity, has everything they need to survive during the winter. But we can't say the same thing about the Ukrainians. Now let's take a look at the map of disposition. And there are, because of changes on the front line, there are a lot of changes on the ground, and we're talking a lot about the counter-offensive operation in the south of Ukraine, in the Zaporozhye area. But if you take a look at the map of disposition, I must say I'm not sure that the Ukrainians are planning to start anything, at least in this area between Zaporozhye power plant and, let's say, Ugledar. In this area there are just territory defenses. So there are a lot of artillery, of course, but there are no mobile and armored vehicles groups in this area. So according to this disposition, I'm not sure that Ukrainians are planning to start any counter-offensive operation in Zaporozhye. As you can see, according to this map and Kherson district, we see that there are a lot of forces, big number of different brigades, and this situation totally corresponds with the situation in reality. The Ukrainians are pushing and attacking all along the front line. Furthermore, the main forces, Ukrainian force located on the north of Kherson district, and we see that this situation on the front line in real life, that Ukrainians are trying to attack. As you can see, also the Russians have moved a lot of forces, a lot of BTGs in this area, as you can see. So they're very compact, they're very like small area to protect, to defense. And to tell the truth, it's highly unlikely that the Ukrainians have possibilities to crack this area. But who knows, because this is the war of artillery, and if Ukrainians starts offensive operation all along the front line, and if the Russians won't be able to use their artillery on every single front line at the same time, maybe in this case the Ukrainians will be able to penetrate the Russian defense orders. Very interesting updates I have mentioned on the territory near Donetsk, near this area. And the most important thing is that the Ukrainians moved on this area 72nd Mechanized Brigade. And this is a very important update, this very interesting situation, because if you remember in the past, the 72nd Mechanized Brigade were located in Bakhmut, in the area of Zaitsevo, Kurdyumovka, Великая Veselaya Dolina, in this area. And if you remember, like a few days in a row, the Russians report that they can establish control over this territory, that they managed to penetrate the Ukrainians' defense orders and so on. Let's take a look at the Russian sources map. I'm talking about this area, about these towns. And this territory used to be under defense of this 72nd Mechanized Brigade. And now the Ukrainians moved this 72nd Mechanized Brigade from this area to the south. And if we take a look at this area at the north west of Donetsk, I believe that if we're talking about this area, that the Ukrainians might try to start some offensive operation in this area, because there are a lot of motorized, mechanized, and tank brigades in this area. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mechanized brigade in this area. Furthermore, there are around 3 motorized brigade, 1 tank brigade, and there are also some territory defense, some Jaeger brigades. So we can say that the Ukrainians do have possibilities to start something in this area. If you remember, many videos ago I told you the same near Kupiansk. I told you that take a look at this front line, because there are a lot of tank brigades, a lot of motorized, and I believe that the Ukrainians would try to do an attack near Izum bridgehead, and something like in a month the Ukrainians did exactly as we projected together. So the same thing I see here, because if we compare with this front line, there are no motorized and mechanized brigades, there are no mobile forces who can use the Ukrainian tactic of moving mobile forces right in heart of the Russian defense. There are no such forces in this area. But if we're talking about this area, there are such kind of forces. And if we're talking about this area, if the Ukrainians decide to start offensive operation in this area, there are few targets that Ukrainians can achieve during this attack. And first of all is, of course, to attack Mariupol. Yes, this is the only target to, first of all, to split the Zaporozhye area, trying to cut these roads from Mariupol, from this railroad that connects, let's say, Mariupol port, Donetsk, and Zaporozhye area, and to storm Mariupol, because for them it's this very important priority question, like to return the biggest town, the heart, the history of Ukrainian defense, the legend of Ukrainian defense during the first phase of this counter-offensive operation. So maybe they will do something like this. If we are talking about Kharkiv areas, as you can see, on the north there are not much forces, but there are a lot of tanks, some motorized, and as we know, the Ukrainians are trying to do something in this area. But the main force is still located in this area, like Kramatorsk, Slaviansk, Liman. So that means that the Ukrainians still want, and I believe that their main goal will be to attack or to do something in direction of Lysychansk agglomeration. So maybe they will do something here as well. So the front line is stable, the time is running, and the time works in Russian favor. Furthermore, today more and more Russian sources reported, and we're talking about the thing that soon, very soon, the Russians are planning to start their own counteroffensive operation, and the question is which direction the Russians decided to use. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds that we condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.